Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome to Spooky. I'm talking Waffles. I'm your host, Ileana. So it officially gets dark at 6:30 p.m. now, and I kind of hate it. I really, really do. I miss daylight so much. And when I say daylight, I just remember daylight savings time is coming up too, and that just ugh. But I think this is the good one because there's spring forward and fall back. So I think this is the one where you fall back the extra hours, you get an extra hour of sleep. So I mean, that's not the worst thing, but I just don't like that it gets dark really early now. And it's also pretty cold out now, but not like annoying cold yet. It's like nice fall weather kind of cold, and the leaves are all beautiful. So doing a lot of my fun fall activities, wearing a lot of plaid. You know the deal. Drinking pumpkin spice lattes. Basically anything I can to really savor the fall months, because here in Canada, fall really only lasts like a month or two, and then it's winter. And that's another topic of discussion as well, that winter is right around the corner. Like, I know technically it's like in December, but winter for us here in Canada, specifically here in Ontario, starts in November because it starts to snow a lot, all the time, and it's really cold, and I do not look forward to it. And it blows my mind that it's almost 2022. Like, how did that happen? Like, we're October right now, November, December, and that's it. Like, I don't know, like, time flies by way too fast, and it scares me sometimes. So today is the last episode of our spooky season series, and then we'll be moving forward to your regular scheduled program starting November. So I wanted to finish off our spooky season theme with irrational fears that myself and my siblings had when we were kids. So without further ado, let's jump right into that. Now, when I say kids are dumb, I don't mean that kids are not intelligent. I just mean that kids are dumb. And you know exactly what I mean. I just don't want to get sued or like canceled or anything for saying kids are dumb. But kids are dumb. And here are a couple of instances why. And talking about myself and my siblings, we have actually curated a list of the irrational fears that we had when we were kids. So some of them you may have actually had. There are, of course, like the generic ones, but then there are some oddly specific ones that I swear myself or my siblings were the only one that ever had that. But if you did, please let me know, because it feels so good when you're not the only weird one, you know? So of course, this wouldn't be a podcast or I'm Talking Waffles if we don't define what we're talking about, because like I learned when I first started writing, some people, they don't know some things that you do, and like you're the expert, so it's your job to educate people and it's their job to ask questions. And of course, obviously I can't hear you and I can't answer your questions during this episode because this is not a live podcast. So I am asking the question that you may be asking is, what's an irrational fear? And I'll tell you, according to Google, an irrational fear is a persistent, abnormal, and irrational fear of a specific thing or situation that compels one to avoid it, despite the awareness and reassurance that it's not dangerous. In other words, a very strong fear, dislike, or aversion. So you know, like, the stuff I'm going to talk about, your brain knows, like, you know, like, it doesn't really make sense, it's not dangerous, but you still avoid it anyway, despite knowing that. Hence, irrational fear and not just fear. Two very common irrational fears tend to be involving spiders and or snakes, and dental checkups. So a lot of these fears, they're pretty minor. But interestingly enough, when irrational fears, become more severe, and cause like way too much anxiety and like interfere with your everyday life, they're actually called phobias. So we're talking about irrational fears, not phobias, but some people, they could be phobias, but in my case and my siblings' case, these are just irrational fears that we had as kids that we kind of grew out some of them. So, of course, the first one that comes to mind is quicksand. I think that the majority of children were terrified of quicksand, and I would say that television is the number one contributing factor for that, because in all the shows, quicksand like kills people, and it's just so common. But honestly, I've never seen quicksand. I thought quicksand was going to be such a big issue when I like grew up, and I thought I would face it like every other day. And so yeah, quicksand, I'm sure you must have had that as well. And similarly to quicksand, piranhas is another one. Again, I'm going to contribute television to this one because I have never seen a piranha in my life. And I know that there are some like salons or like spas that have those piranhas that like eat your dead foot skin to make your feet really soft. So like piranhas don't seem to be that dangerous, but in all the TV shows, piranhas always eat people, especially if it's like a pirate and they're like walking the plank and they're like, oh no, there's piranhas, and they jump down and the piranhas just eat them. So yeah, piranhas. And then this wasn't one that myself or any of my siblings had, but related to the popularity of quicksand and piranhas is the Bermuda Triangle. That everybody I knew talked about that. They're like, oh my goodness, like the Bermuda Triangle. I'm like, when is the last time you've ever heard about that? I swear that people only talked about that when you're like 12 or 13 and then you just kind of forget about it and it doesn't become an issue. Similarly, of course, to quicksand and piranhas. So those are like, that's like the golden trio of irrational fears that I feel like every kid has had. But now we're gonna go a little bit more in depth to the fears that I feel like maybe not everybody has because they get oddly specific. The next one I have is sharks in the pool. But the thing about the sharks in the pool is that the sharks only existed if I was the only one in the pool, and they only existed in the deep end. So if I had my siblings in the pool with me, we're just kind of hanging out and swimming and doing pool stuff, there would be no sharks. But if my siblings left the pool, suddenly there would be a great white shark in my brain in the deep end. And so I would like panic and I would try and like swim out as fast as I could because I didn't want the shark to eat me. And my pool obviously had like that, like a plug or something at the bottom. And I thought that's where the sharks would come out of, even though it makes no sense because the shark is certainly bigger than the pool and there's no way it would fit through that little like cork. So yeah, sharks in the pool. Another one that is a little oddly specific is mice eating my toes in my sleep. Myself and one of my younger sisters had this fear and we're just terrified of mice all the time and we just thought they would eat us. And I think it comes from because we got one of those like humane mice traps, the one with the box, and they go in and they don't get killed, you just like set them free. And we got one of those, and when we went to check it, there were 2 mice in there, but the other mouse had eaten the other one, and it was so terrifying and disgusting that mice eating toes is definitely like a possibility in a child's mind. I'm like, oh my goodness, the mouse ate the other mouse. It's totally gonna eat me next. And speaking of things trying to eat me, when I was 8 years old, I killed a spider with Windex. And honestly, this is something that still haunts me. And when I think about it, it kind of gives me a lump in my throat and it makes me feel nauseous still to this day. And so I was terrified that because I killed that spider, thousands of spiders would suddenly come out and eat me as revenge. And I was like always on edge because I'm like looking around. I'm like, are there going to be a bunch of spiders? Are they going to eat me? Like, when is it going to come? Like, when are these spiders going to eat me because I killed one of their own? Obviously, that never happened, but I thought it would, and I was terrified, and I still feel bad about killing that spider. I killed a centipede 2 days ago, and I feel really guilty about it and kind of sick when I think about it. So, I mean, I guess that's good, right? Like, I wouldn't be a murderer because I would feel too, like, remorseful about it. Like, I feel bad about a spider I killed at 8 years old, and I'm 22 now, so that's a long time. Centipede I killed the other day, that's another story. I was terrified and my boyfriend was asleep and it's like crawling on the walls and I'm like freaking out and I crushed it twice and like jumped on the top of a chair and he thought I was being like murdered and he's like, what's going on? I'm like, it's a centipede. And so he threw it out for me, which was nice because I would have just left it under the bottle that I crushed it with because there was no way I could touch it or even get close to it after that. Ugh, ugh. Or that time I killed a cockroach. Ugh. Okay, I don't even want to talk about that. Anyways, moving forward. I also had an incredible irrational fear about tornadoes. I have no idea where this one came from, but I used to hide in my closet on rainy days because I was scared that a tornado would come and kill me in my sleep. So I would try and like sleep in the closet. And there was this one time that I was so scared that I put like a bunch of my clothes clothes and toys to make it look like I was sleeping on my bed. And then I hid in the closet and my grandma came in and she was like asking me something. I was replying from the closet and she's like, are you gonna go up? Like, get up and help me? And I'm like, yep. And then I climb out of the closet and she's like, what are you doing in there? Like, why are you, like, what is that on the bed? I'm like, oh, it's nothing. And then I just continued about whatever I had to do, which still embarrasses me to this day. But yeah, that's how scared I was of tornadoes. Honestly, I'm still scared of tornadoes. Anytime there's a big storm, I like look out looking for funnel clouds and I'm like, what's gonna happen? Because I don't know, like, what do you do if there's a tornado when you live in an apartment? Like, I'm on one of the high up floors, so the tornado, I'm sure, would be faster than me getting to like the parking ground level, right? So honestly, I have no idea. If you know what to do if there's a tornado and you live in an apartment on a high up floor, please let me know, because honestly, sometimes it makes it hard to sleep because I'm like, what am I gonna do? Am I just gonna like get whizzed away by this tornado? Another one I had, okay, honestly, I still have this. Anytime I open the oven that's preheated, I'm always scared it's gonna explode and kill me, like in the movies when people put like a bomb in there. So that's another one. There's this one that honestly, it was one of my older brothers who got me scared of this, and it's rats or snakes coming from the toilet when you're doing your business. And I never thought about it until one day he was like, yeah, one of my fears is like, well, he always said like a little hand coming out from the toilet and like tickling him when he was in the bathroom. But then I kind of thought of like rats or snakes. But honestly, if like a hand came out of the toilet when I was trying to use the bathroom, that's probably more terrifying than rats and snakes. But rats and snakes coming out of the toilet is also terrifying. One of my siblings had told me that when they were a younger kid, they were scared that if they looked at the microwave, it would turn them into the Hulk if they opened it when the timer was still on. Yeah, I don't really know, but I guess, like, honestly, I didn't like open the microwave unless if the timer was on as well, but I didn't think I turned into the Hulk. But that's definitely an oddly specific one, which is great. Another one that for some reason a lot of my siblings and I had is we were told that old people shrink with age, and we were all terrified that that meant our grandma was going to shrink really, really small to the size of an ant. And honestly, we were scared that would happen for real and that we would step on her and crush her when she's ant-sized. And yeah, that was a fear that apparently all of us had, or the majority of us had, which was very strange. Another one that one of my younger sisters told me about, she said that she's really scared of giant mutant mice that come out when our dad goes to bed, and only when he goes to bed. So these mutant mice only existed when our dad went to bed. She's terrified of mice. Like a mouse fell on her once, or like ran on her foot, and like every single fear that she told me about when I was asking, like for irrational fears of childhood, all of hers were mice related. So I just took one of her mice related ones, because this one is just really funny to me that giant mutant mice only come out when our dad goes to bed. Like, imagine how that would go. It's like our dad's like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed now, and he like goes into the bed and whatever, like goes to sleep, and the mice are like, oh, he's asleep, time to go terrorize the kids now. And then the mutant mice like kind of run around. Like, that's just really funny to me. And finally, there was this one like kind of creaky piece of like floorboard right in front of my grandma's room that if you stepped on it, it kind of went down and then back up. And every single one of us were terrified of it. We thought that we would step on it and like fall through the floor, or like we would step through it and our foot would go through like a bunch of nails and stuff. So yeah, that was scary. Thankfully, my dad had renovated the house a couple of years ago, and that's one of the first things he fixed. So there was like a nice new floor and everything. So no scary, creaky, wiggly floorboard, which this reminds me of one that I didn't put on my list. But if you ever saw those Terry's chocolate orange commercials, there's this one where the guy like hits the Terry's chocolate orange on the table, and the woman who was like in the apartment above, I believe, her bathtub like falls through the ceiling, and she's in the bathtub and she's like, oh, and like covers herself, and it's like, good things happen when you break open a Terry's orange or something. And that always scared me, because I was scared that anytime I would have a bath, that someone would hit a Terry's orange and the bathtub would fall, and I would fall with the bathtub, and everybody would see me in the bathtub. And it scared me for a very long time. Now anytime I do have a bath, it's only if I put my head underwater that I'm scared it's gonna magically just break through all of the like rooms, and I'll just like land in the bathtub in like some random room. So yeah, commercials really influence these fears, I swear. Like television commercials, so many of these just come from that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed these irrational fears. I hope they gave you a laugh. I hope they got you thinking about some of your irrational fears. Of course, tweet out at I'm Talking Waffles some of your irrational fears. And if any of these irrational fears you have as well, I'm very curious, especially if you have like that mutant mice one that only exists when our dad goes to sleep. That would be interesting to see. Well, I suppose read. So yeah, whatever fears, irrational fears you had as a kid, or perhaps that you have right now, send them in. I would love to hear them. So that concludes our Halloween spooky season series for this year. Starting up next Monday, we'll be back to our regular scheduled program with our regular scheduled little like intro theme song. And then of course in December, we're gonna get very Christmassy with like Christmas music and Christmas themes. So stay tuned for that. There's a lot of exciting things in store for I'm Talking Waffles. So stay tuned, keep up with our social media. We got some really cool stuff in the works that I'm dying to talk about, but I can't just yet. So wait and see what that's all about. Really pumped about it. So it is now time for everybody's favorite part of the show. That's right, it's the fun fact of the day. So today's fun fact is, dun da da! Humans shed a lot of skin. According to the World Health Organization and recent studies, the average person will shed 112 pounds of skin in their lifetime. And then another fact that was on this list that I was like, ew, really? Is that pine trees have been proven that they can grow inside the body. Doctors recently went into surgery to remove what they thought was a tumor, but it actually turned out to be a tree growing in a man's lungs. Ew. How does that even happen? And okay, we're gonna do 3 because 3rd time's a charm. This fun fact is specifically for my sister. Mice and rats can spread at least 35 different diseases to humans. These infections include salmonitis, hantavirus, and rat bite fever. I'm sure I mispronounced those, but is it even an I'm Talking Waffles episode if I don't mispronounce at least one word? So with that, I'm going to bid you a great rest of your morning, great rest of your evening, great rest of your night, great rest of your apocalypse, and great rest of spooky season. I hope you have a great Halloween. Happy Halloween if you celebrate. Happy just day if you don't celebrate it. Okay, bye!